Welcome to this week's edition of Property Management Transform. I'm Fiona Blaney, your super coach. This week on Property Management Transform, we're working with Hannah Gill. Now, Hannah Gill is currently the Managing Director of the Independent Property Group. But before that, she was simply a new business growth rock star, having won a swag of awards. We're really excited to be working with Hannah this week as we take our business development teams up through the transformation next level. Let's take a look.
So in the next 30 minutes, really, I just wanted to share with you sort of some tips and advice I've learned as a BDM. I've been in business development for about 5 years and just recently changed roles. So, and we're based in Canberra. Fundamentally, I think what it's all about to be a successful BDM is to simply stand out from the crowd. And I think we can overcomplicate that a lot, but I think it's actually a really simple process because all we need to do is the 1%ers, and we need to do them consistently, and we need to do them really, really well. But I think that's where a lot of people fall down, because once you get used to doing the same thing over and over, we become complacent and we forget to do those little things that really add a lot of value. For me as a BDM, I think my success has come from really focusing on making sure every experience is personal. And I think that's how we can stand out from the crowd. So we'll touch on probably 3 core points today. That's pre-listing, during the listing, and obviously after the listing as well, because that whole process is really important. The second part I want to talk about today is how we can build trust and how we can add peace of mind for our clients. And you know, we all know that opinions are formed like in a split second, and that's unavoidable, but how can that first impression be positive, and then how can we build from that and make every future impression positive? So that's really important to obviously win business. And the third thing I want to touch on today is knowing our stuff. I think in this industry, in any job, it's if we don't know our stuff, we're going to fail. And so I think as a BDM, it's a really important part, usually as a first contact for an agency, to let the client know that we do know what we're talking about and we're good at what we do. If I'm a client and I say to you, what's your point of difference? Why should I list with you over the agent down the road? Because at the end of the day, it's actually not about what we're selling. It's not about us and what we can offer. It all comes down to what our client is looking to buy. What I mean by that is have a think about the tools in your toolbox. How many things can you pull out to potentially add value depending on what the client's needs are? So, I mean, we can have the best technology underpinning what we do. We can have the best statistics. But if your client doesn't care about those things, you're not going to win the listing. So don't rely on one point of difference in your business, because you will fall down. Even if you are the best, you will fall down if that's the only thing you've got, because not everyone wants the same thing. To understand that, we need to understand what our client's buying. And then once we know what they're after, what their concerns are, what their fears are, then we can make what our point of difference is really meaningful and relevant to them. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. I'll run through with you some examples of what I've done over time and what's worked really well in our business. And some of these are really simple. They're really no-brainer stuff. But again, it's making sure we don't get complacent or we don't miss the integral parts to really add value to that experience. So for example, things like arranging quotes for maintenance or for blinds in a new property, collecting keys on settlement. I mean, in Canberra, that's easy. But in Sydney and some of the other bigger cities, I imagine for a client to have to go and park at their solicitor and pick up keys, that's a real pain. So let's add value by taking that pressure off them. The fee structure. You may have a first-time investor and those upfront costs might be a real burden to them. Do you have ways that you can add value by structuring it differently? You might have an all-inclusive fee, or you might split those upfront costs across a 3 or 4 month period. That's adding value, that's separating you from your competition. How can we educate our clients? Education is the most important thing, I think, when you're trying to win business, because if they can see that you know what you're talking about and you can teach them something new, you're already a step ahead of your competition. For example as well, that doesn't need to be new clients. Once we get a client, it's really, really important that we continue to educate them. I think there's a big emphasis on the business development part of it, and then they become part of the numbers game, and they fall out of sight a bit. We need to continue that education even when we secure a client, so they feel that value is always there. So for example, something we do, we run what we call our insight session, and we invite our clients to our office and we get different guest speakers in. So our most recent one was tax depreciation and a mortgage broker, just to explain how they can add value for their property. Okay, so ways we can educate and keep helping our clients learn. Also being thorough. Now, when I say being thorough, I'm talking about things in the way that we report. So, are your inventory and condition reports the best practice across the industry? Do they have all the details? So if the client's comparing yours to a competitor's, you've got everything you need to know right there. My old boss always used to say, the shortest pencil is better than the longest memory. And I totally think that is such a quote to live by. If we don't write it down, if we don't have the detail, the devil's in the detail. So we need to show our clients that we can do that for them, because that's going to help build that trust and add value. Professionalism. Who's got professional photographers? I imagine you guys all use professional photography. But the point is, if we're not providing the best option for our clients, the agent down the road will be. So in whatever way that looks like, or however that fits in your marketplace, in our marketplace, we were the first agency to introduce professional photography. And that made a hell of a lot of difference for our listings and the way that we're perceived in the public, because it was consistent. All our marketing and all our advertising, the structure of our ads was consistent. And we started getting more listings simply because this presence looks so much more professional. So we need to look at how we're perceived by the market. In your business, it's really important to always be looking at how we can add value, how we can create points of difference, because our market is always changing. We know that. And if we're not being agile to adapt to those changes, we're going to fall behind. So I think the way to look at it, the most simplest way to look at it, is if working with you doesn't make someone's life easier or doesn't solve a problem that they previously couldn't solve without you, then we're not doing our job properly. And if they're coming up against 3, 4 or 5 different people to get the same advice, the one who stands out is the one who's actually making life easy for them. So in every interaction you have with someone, I'd encourage you guys to think about how you can make that difference. Second part, moving along, building trust and creating peace of mind. And I think it's really vital in booking the initial appointment and ultimately securing the listing, because if we don't build trust with someone, we're not going to win their business ever. And trust builds speed, and in our business everything's so fast paced, so the sooner we can build trust, the easier our life is. I mean, when I first moved into business development about 5 years ago, at the time, most of our referrals or most of our listings were coming from our sales team, over 70%, which is great. But that's actually showing that we're fundamentally falling down as a business, because the sales referral should be the cream on top. So we worked really hard to keep our current clients happy and to build and add value for them, which now means that our sales referrals account for only 20 to 25% of our growth, and the rest is organic from clients and from referrals. And as businesses, that's really what we want to be looking to achieve. And the sales stuff is just a bonus if we have it. Make sense? I think we need to make sure that we do address concerns. It's very easy when you go into a listing presentation, if someone is worried or upset about something, it's often easy to skim over that, because that can be a bit of a difficult point in the conversation, but that's really your opportunity to make an impact. So if someone has a concern, really focus on that, get them to talk about how they feel about it. They might have had a terrible experience, let's say, with rent arrears or a tenant trashing a property. Once they've been able to feel that they can share that story with you, and then you can come back to them and explain what systems we have in place and what processes to avoid that happening again, that's how we build trust. Because I think not only has this person heard me, but they're actually providing solutions so that this awful experience I've had won't happen again. But we have to make sure we listen. We need to listen more than we talk. So I like the quote, 2 ears, 1 mouth, use them that way. And I think it's really important when we are meeting a new client or we're talking to a new client before we even book the appraisal, when you ask a question, shut up. How many people ask a question and keep talking? Particularly when we get to the close. I still remember my first appraisal. It was the worst experience ever. It was dreadful. And I built everything up and I went through all the books the way I'd been shown. And at the very end, I get to the close. So would you like to sign with us? Because, I just start talking and it just keeps going, and they're just sitting there looking at me like, what is this person on about? So if you're gonna ask a question, just shut up and listen. Also, we need to do what we say we will. Simple, right? But how many of us fall down on that? We lose credibility so quickly if we don't do something we say we're gonna do. Whether that's, I'll call you back before 3 o'clock, or I'll send you through the CMA this afternoon. If for any reason that's not achievable, you have to let them know. Send a text. I said I'd call you at 3, just caught up in a meeting, I'll call you as soon as possible. You will literally lose listings if you do not do those simple things. But again, how many of us are guilty of having done that? Pricing correctly. I mean, that would, again, seem like a no-brainer, right? But how many agents potentially in your market area do you see underprice or overprice? Again, if you do that, you're just going to lose credibility right away. The owners aren't going to respect you. You might secure them a tenant, which is great, but they're not going to value your service, and in 12 months' time, you can bet they're going to go elsewhere. I also think it's really, really important when we're building trust that we tell third-party stories. It's very easy for us to sit in front of a client and rabbit on about what we think is the case, but if you can share with them, again, relating back to their concerns and their experiences, and tell a story that's actually happened, that's going to have so much more depth and meaning. So, for example, one of my favourites was when I was trying to get landlord's insurance signed up with a client, and a lot of clients think, oh, well, I don't need insurance, I've got a property manager. So I'd always tell a story about a client of mine whose apartment burnt down and the tenants were unfortunately injured in the fire, and but she had insurance, and as a result she was able to get brand new fit out, and the tenants' rent was covered and they were okay. And you just see owners' faces drop when they understand the potential risk. That's not my story, that's someone else's story, but the fact that they can relate to it is really powerful. So borrow other people's stories if you need to, but third-party stories are really powerful to win the business and also upsell. And be confident. Nothing worse when you get to the fees and you've built up how great you are, or as you said, we're the best. Nothing worse when you get to the fees and suddenly an owner can hint that lack of confidence when you say, oh, the management fee's 8.8, and suddenly they think, hang on, you've just told me how good you are, and now you're not confident when you're telling me what it's going to cost me. So confidence when you deliver the fees is so important. You have to own it, because if they get any hint of a lack of that, one, you're going to lose that trust, and two, they're probably going to try to negotiate. So you really want to nail the fee part of it. One of the most important parts in my experience has been following up until you get a decision. I'm not talking about stalking people, but I'm definitely talking about continuing to contact them until they say yes or no. I think it's about setting expectations at the actual listing presentation. So whenever I meet with a client, I talk to them about how if they didn't want to sign on the spot or they were comparing a few other agents, I'd always confirm a time or a day that I would actually follow them up. And by doing that, you're sort of implying that you will be the person getting the listing. Not in an arrogant way, but it's that subconscious acceptance of, yeah, you can come back to my home and we'll have a second discussion. If they're not going to use you, they're not going to agree to that. And then they're ignoring your calls, I mean, that happens. There's not much we can do. I'd just encourage you to try different channels of communication. SMS is a good one, because if people don't want to use you, often a text message is the easiest way they'll tell you. So if they're not answering your calls, flick them an email or shoot them a text, and you'll probably get some answer that way. One of my most successful listings actually came from being told, no, you don't have the listing. So it was a developer client, and in Canberra there's a lot of developer clients who are starting to retain whole sites, which gives us a really great opportunity to go in and pitch for big numbers, which we haven't had in the past, so it's pretty cool. But I had this client, I pitched to them about 6 times. They had an existing property manager, they were really happy with them, they had the trust and the relationship, but they had this new development coming up of 75 apartments. So I went in for all these pitches, I was really confident, I did all the things that I'm sharing with you guys today. And after about the 6th pitch, just before I got up to do a presentation, I was getting mic'd up. He called me and he said, sorry, but we're going to stick with our existing agent because we trust them, which is great. I get that, I respect that. I said to him though, can I give you a call in 4 weeks? Because they had 75 apartments and I knew for any agent that's tough to move that level of stock. And 4 weeks, and he said, yeah, sure, give me a call, that's fine, but they're a very good agency. And I said, totally respect that. So in 4 weeks to the day, gave him a call. I said, hey Tom, just wanted to let you know that I'm following up. It's 4 weeks to the day. You said I could give you a call. How's it all going? And he said, well, actually, can you come and have a chat with us? So from that phone call, they gave me 1 floor. I got 14 apartments from that call. And that was great, we were stoked. We also actually rented those 14 apartments super quickly. So I actually got another floor. And in the end, we ended up renting 36 apartments in a development of 75 for a client we'd previously were told no. Because I made the follow-up call. I can guarantee he would not have called me. That's just not how it works. But I did what I said I was going to do, and I followed up until I got an outcome. And to go one step further, a couple of months ago, they gave me another 20 apartments. And right now they're building a development of 105 apartments they intend to retain. All for following up a month later. Okay, so I can't stress that enough, because now they're one of our biggest clients. So just keep following up. For starters, we need to be the market expert. If you can't shoot off currently your average days on markets, your average rents, your vacancy rates, information like that, someone else will be able to. And that information, that understanding of your market adds so much value for clients that they're going to go with a person who can give them that knowledge. I think equally as important is being the region expert. Local sells. So if we're not knowing the latest coffee shop or a great place to have, a bite to eat or what's going on in the community, again, especially for local owners, they want to know that you care about the community because that's where they live, that's where their home may be, and it's really important that we are immersed in that as much as they are. And tracking your numbers. Now, this is something I could talk all day on. Business development is a numbers game. It's just like sales. I won't get into it too much. I know Fiona's done a great presentation already on goal setting, but I do want to leave one really important tracking suggestion with you, and that is close rates. In a BDM role, in a pure BDM role, we need to be at least 85%, otherwise we're wasting time. I've worked with agents who are working on 50%, and that's a hell of a lot of work to be able to achieve your numbers. So I think it's so important that you guys keep a really close eye on that. We track it weekly. You can essentially apply the same thing for leasing, number of exhibitions versus applications, yeah. But I think fundamentally that's the best statistic to track in business development, and that helps us work backwards to manage our goals. So the weekly to the monthly to the yearly, however you track it, the close rates will help you structure that. A lot of what I've talked about, I'm sure you guys are doing, but I think if it's really front of mind for you and you're conscious about it and you can commit to really doing that 99% of the time, your numbers will increase.
Be so great, they simply can't ignore you. What an amazing quote that Hannah's shared with us from Steve Martin this week. Next week, we'll be bringing back to you Sam McLean, our very own homegrown resource on connecting with more people. You'll see that Hannah's session and Sam's session really segue together to help us grow our businesses. And I know you've already got so much to take away from Hannah Gill. If you want to watch more, jump online to eliteagent.com.au/transform, where you can get involved in all of the other sessions and those that are coming up. We look forward to seeing you again next week.